Today we're taking a look not just at the crime itself, but really into the investigation side, the dark, often deeply frustrating part of true crime. We're focusing on cold cases, specifically those where, well, the investigation process itself became almost as terrifying, as tangled as the original event. We've got accounts here from people who are actually there chasing these shadows, an FBI agent, a private investigator, even a former state patrolman.
Yeah, and it's important to remember, TV and movies make detective work seem quite romanticized sometimes, but these accounts tonight, they really show the brutal complexity, the emotional toll, cases that just refuse to close.
Absolutely. And it wasn't always about finding a clever clue. Sometimes it was bureaucracy, sometimes pure coincidence, sometimes, well, something much worse that kept the truth hidden.
Exactly. You see, the reality involves bureaucratic walls, legal hurdles, and sometimes, like you said, maybe even deliberate actions ensuring things stay buried.
Okay, let's start with one that really highlights that frustration. It comes from Mississippi around 2003, 2004, when they set up their first dedicated cold case unit. We have this account from an FBI agent, that's the Mississippi Bureau of Investigation. Now, he was pretty frank. He said his goal wasn't to get trapped in the archives. He wanted to chase active killers.
Well, you can understand that. There's an immediate tension there, right? In any state bureau, resources are tight. Investigators have to prioritize. And it's not just about solving the crime decades later. You also have to convince the district attorney that it's worth prosecuting. Politically, financially, especially with new cases piling up.
And that pressure, that reality, it smacked right into his first big cold case. A really horrific Jane Doe found way back in 1993, Marshall County. The details are grim. A truck driver pulls over, smells something awful, something sickeningly familiar, he said, and he finds her.
It was a truly shocking scene. Her body was dismembered, placed in 2 separate trash bags, torso and arms in one bag, legs in the other. But crucially, her head, her hands, and her feet were all missing,
making identification almost impossible.
Exactly. The autopsy put her age somewhere between 17 and 25. And disturbingly, it noted signs of heavy drug use. Cocaine and methamphetamine, and really high levels of 2CB, which is a potent psychedelic.
Now, the original investigators back in '93, they actually thought they had their guy pretty quickly. They found size 12 Red Wings boot prints at the scene, and that linked directly to a known serial killer, George Jones. He was already convicted for murdering 3 prostitutes in the area.
So the assumption was she must be his 4th victim. Makes sense on the surface.
Right. They even tried to add this Jane Doe murder to his charges back in 1998.
But this is where the cold case investigator, our FBI agent, started having doubts. He looked deeper than the easy answer. He noticed some really key inconsistencies. Jones's other victims, they showed signs of, wild, frenzied mutilation. He often cut them while they were still alive. Horrific stuff. But this Jane Doe, the dismemberment was different. It was almost clinical. The head, hands, feet removed after death, probably like you said, to prevent ID. It just didn't fit Jones's known pattern.
And there was physical evidence too, wasn't there, from Jones's truck?
Yes, exactly. Jones had actually been convicted for his other murders, partly thanks to his truck's tachometer data, like a black box for trucks. It proved he'd lied about his routes for those crimes. But for the time frame of this Jane Doe murder, his tachometer data actually supported his alibi. It matched the route he claimed he took.
So the jury saw that inconsistency.
They did. They acquitted him on the Jane Doe charge.
Which left the cold case agent.
Yeah.
Where? Back at square one, essentially.
Worse than square one, really. Because now he knew the DA wouldn't likely fund a whole new investigation from scratch unless he could link Jane Doe to another known killer. So he had to kind of bend the rules a bit, start his own hunt to figure out who she was, mostly off the books.
So he started digging. Methodically, cross-referencing missing persons reports from 88 to 93, looking for fair-haired women, 17 to 25, maybe with a history of drug use. And he found a promising lead. A woman had reported her stepdaughter missing. The physical description was a near-perfect match, and there was one very specific detail. A small, unique scar just above her right elbow.
Wow.
And that scar matched a detail in Jane Doe's autopsy photos.
That must have felt like the breakthrough, the moment you think, okay, we've got her.
Oh, absolutely. He was confident. He sent off a DNA sample from the missing girl's stepsister, fully expecting that confirmation, that match.
Yeah.
And the result, 0% match.
Yeah.
Nothing. Complete dead end. It just sent the whole thing crashing down again.
That's crushing. But this is where the investigator really showed his persistence. Instead of just giving up, he started questioning the original missing person report itself. Why 0 match? What if? What if the missing girl wasn't actually the father's biological daughter? What if the father had lied about who he even was?
And this is where the story takes a really dark turn. He started digging into the background of this supposed father. No adoption records, nothing official. But the stepmother, she remembered his social security number. She gave it to the agent. He runs the SSN, and it doesn't belong to the name this guy had been using for decades.
Oh, wow.
It belonged to a completely different person, a man with a criminal record. Indecent exposure, attempted kidnapping of a minor. This guy wasn't just a stepfather, he was an identity thief, a fugitive living under a stolen name.
Good grief. The layers of deception there are just
Yep.
staggering, hiding a whole criminal past.
And then came the final, chilling piece. The agent asked the stepmother, when exactly did this father leave? When did he disappear from their lives? She told him. He walked out, mysteriously, no explanation, on Friday the 13th, August 1993.
Friday the 13th.
In Jane Doe's body. It was found the very next day, Saturday, August 14th, 1993.
The timing, it's undeniable.
The agent put it together. He concluded this man, this identity thief, likely killed his victim. Maybe the missing stepdaughter, maybe someone else entirely connected to his hidden life right after the missing persons report was filed for the stepdaughter. Perhaps as a cover. Then he vanished. Became a ghost.
So he essentially solved it. He knew who did it. He understood the likely motive, the deception. But the killer...
The killer was gone. Untouchable. Vanished using another identity, probably. The agent, he said the emotional weight was just awful. He had to officially reclose the case. No arrest. He couldn't even tell the stepmother the full truth about her husband, that he was a killer, an identity thief, a potential predator, because there was no active prosecution.
Leaving the man presumably still out there, maybe being tracked by federal agencies, but fundamentally free. A chilling outcome.
Yeah. A killer who escapes through deceit and just disappearing. Okay, let's shift gears now to a different kind of awful frustration. This one's from the UK, a private investigator's story. This is about a killer potentially hiding in plain sight, almost protected by, well, by legal technicalities. So this PI gets hired by a mother. Her adult son's been missing nearly a year. The police had initially investigated, but then they sort of downgraded it. Why?
Because the mother received a text message, supposedly from her son's phone.
Right, a text saying he was okay, but he just, quote, wanted a new start. Something like that.
And that one text, that changed everything for law enforcement. It shifted the official status from a potential foul play missing person case to someone who voluntarily left, which meant police resources were basically pulled, even though the mother kept saying, that doesn't sound like my son. And crucially, he never answered any calls directly, always went to voicemail or the phone was off.
So the PI takes the case. He starts where the son's phone last pinged. A place described as a dodgy pub. You know the type. He goes in, starts observing. And he immediately clocks this group of 5 older men. They stand out.
How so?
Their clothes. They were dressed in really expensive designer gear. Stone Island, St. Laurent, Barber jackets, way too flashy, too wealthy for this particular pub's usual crowd. They screamed, money.
Okay, so that's a red flag right away, not just local drinkers.
Exactly. The PI figures they're likely involved in something serious, maybe drugs. So he uses a local contact, described as a drug user and prostitute, to gather some intel quietly. She confirms his hunch. Yeah, these guys are high-level drug dealers, heavy hitters in the area. And she reveals something crucial. The missing young man, right before he disappeared, he'd had some kind of argument, a set to, with one of the mid-level dealers associated with this group.
Ah, the connection. The argument is the potential motive, the flashpoint.
Precisely. The PI realizes this argument is probably the key, but he needs proof. Something solid to link the dealer to the disappearance, or worse. So he goes deep undercover, disguised, the whole thing, returns to the pub over several nights, and he starts doing something very specific. He repeatedly calls the missing son's mobile number, night after night. Call, voicemail. Call, voicemail.
That takes patience and nerve.
He's in a potentially dangerous environment, drawing attention to that phone number.
Definitely. Then on the third night, maybe the third call attempt that evening, something different happens. The phone doesn't go to voicemail, it rings. It actually rings in the pub.
Wow. Okay.
He immediately scans the room, focusing on that group of dealers. And he sees it. The shortest one, salt and pepper hair, wearing a Stone Island jumper. He sees the man reach quickly inside his jacket, look down at something hidden, presumably the phone, decline the call, and then immediately switch the device off. Got him. That's the proof. The dealer has the missing lad's phone. An old burner, maybe, but his phone. He was the one sending those texts, keeping up the pretense the son was alive and well, just wanted to be left alone. To stop the mother, stop the police looking too hard.
Exactly. The PI knew. He'd found him. The killer, almost certainly, was sitting right there in that pub, probably killed the young man after that argument, and was now literally holding the evidence.
Yeah.
But here's the gut punch. Here's the systemic failure. He takes all this, the observation, the phone ringing incident, the context of the argument, he takes it all to the police. They refuse to act.
Yeah.
They basically say, our hands are tied.
Why? What was the reasoning?
Legally, owning an old phone, even if it belonged to a missing person, wasn't a crime. Sending a couple of vague texts saying, I'm okay, not enough.
Unless he was using it for explicit fraud or extortion or provable harassment, the act of just having the phone and sending misleading messages.
Yeah.
It didn't cross the legal threshold for them to get a warrant, make an arrest, or even seriously investigate him based on that alone.
So the suspected murderer just keeps sitting in the pub, making money, because the law, as written, couldn't touch him for that specific act of deception.
He's protected by a loophole. Not by being clever, necessarily, but because the legal definition of the crime didn't fit what he was doing, even though the implication was horrifyingly clear.
It's maddening. A killer hiding right there, and the system can't reach him.
It really makes you question how well our laws keep up with the ways criminals can actually operate and deceive. That PI did incredible work, only to be blocked by a definition.
Okay, let's move to our last story. And this one. This one might be the most disturbing. It touches on systemic failure that feels like it borders on, well, maybe conspiracy. This account comes via the relative of a former Wisconsin State Patrolman who later became a private investigator. And this PI apparently used to say his biggest fear wasn't the criminals he chased.
What was it then?
Corruption. Incompetence.
Yeah.
Within the system itself. The people supposed to be upholding the law. So flash forward to 2013. This PI takes on a cold case. A murder from 1983 in Milwaukee. Victim's body dumped off a bridge. Standard procedure. He requests the original case files from the Milwaukee Police Department. First they delay, then they delay again. Finally, after weeks or months, the official response comes back. Sorry, the case file seems to have been misplaced.
Misplaced. That old chestnut. Okay, it can happen in a big department. Files get misfiled. Archives are messy. But for the family, hiring the PI, trying to get answers after 30 years, that's not just an inconvenience. It's a massive roadblock. Potentially kills the investigation before it even starts, costs them time, money, hope.
Exactly. A huge setback. But the real horror, the true understanding of what misplaced might have meant, didn't come until years later, after the PI had actually retired. He's reading the news one day and sees a headline. Something like, Milwaukee police destroy DNA murder evidence.
Oh no, destroyed evidence. How? Why?
Apparently, sometime back in the mid-1990s, the Milwaukee PD had destroyed about 50 evidence files from murder cases, the official reason given. They needed more storage space. Seriously, that was the excuse. They claimed files from unsolved cases got accidentally mixed in with old solved case files that were genuinely due for shredding.
Wait. They needed storage space for paper files in the mid-90s, and they manually selected files for destruction. This wasn't like accidentally hitting delete on a computer. Someone physically handled those files. Why on earth would you destroy evidence from unsolved murders, files that probably cost pennies to store in a box somewhere?
Especially then, the mid-1990s.
Exactly. That's the critical point. The mid-90s was precisely when DNA technology was exploding. It was becoming the single most powerful tool for cracking cold cases. If you cared about justice, that's when you'd be preserving old evidence, not destroying it.
So the retired PI, reading this news years later, he saw it through the lens of his own experience with that misplaced file. He basically concluded there were only two possibilities, both terrifying. Possibility one, sheer, unbelievable incompetence. Cops just too dumb to be allowed outside, as he apparently put it. A system so broken by basic human error that crucial evidence gets tossed like trash.
Or possibility two,
Deliberate action. He feared it was corruption. That maybe some officers realized this powerful new DNA tech could potentially link evidence in old unsolved cases back to them.
Yeah.
Or maybe to people they were protecting.
So destroy the evidence before science could catch up. Ensure those cases stayed cold forever.
Yeah. By shredding those files, they guarantee that evidence could never be re-examined with modern, reliable science. And suddenly that misplaced file from the 1983 case doesn't sound like a simple mistake anymore, does it?
No, it sounds like maybe it was part of the same pattern. A convenient excuse given to the PI because the evidence he was looking for had already been deliberately destroyed years earlier.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? When justice gets blocked by something as mundane sounding as storage issues or a misplaced file, how often is that just a cover? A way to protect the guilty and keep victims trapped in silence?
It's a deeply unsettling thought. The system failing not just through error, but potentially through malice.
So these three stories, they really paint a picture, don't they? Different kinds of failure, different kinds of frustration for those seeking justice. You have the killer who slips away using stolen identities and just disappears into the ether. You have the killer hiding right under everyone's nose, shielded by the precise wording of the law, a legal technicality. And then you have the possibility of killers, or at least their crimes, being protected by the system itself, whether through staggering incompetence or, far more chillingly, deliberate corruption.
Three very different paths, all leading to the same dead end. Justice denied.
And it leaves you with this really sobering question, I think. If dedicated investigators, people with resources, with strong hunches, sometimes with pretty compelling evidence, if they can hit these kinds of impenetrable walls, bureaucracy, legal loopholes, maybe even sabotage from within, then how many other victims are out there, trapped in cold case files right now, just waiting for a justice that might actually never arrive because the system, in one way or another, failed them long ago? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into these particularly difficult true crime accounts. We hope shedding light on these investigative challenges has given you some insight, maybe some things to think about. If you were gripped by these stories and this analysis, please do support the channel. Be sure to claim that. Like, score mine, how you subscribe to our channel, Docx, for more terrifying true stories. We appreciate you listening. Goodbye until next time.